Chief Lanier, juvenile crime and justice has been a very intense debate this year, particularly because it was the center of the investigation into the South Capitol Street shootings. Even though the juvenile suspect in that case was later exonerated, we spoke earlier this week about legislation that the D.C. City Council is considering that would make the identities of juvenile offenders public after their second offense, a two strikes and you're out kind of rule. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that everybody is struggling with what is the appropriate balance here, and I think we all agree that there are some protections afforded to juveniles, those under the age of 18, that are appropriate, but how many of those protections that are being afforded right now are hampering our ability to intervene and really protect them physically? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. And I always tell people I look at things like a police officer. It's the only way I can do it. But some of the privacy protection things actually hurt our ability to physically protect children. And that's where my position is on this thing. So I'm glad that they're looking at it. I'm glad that they're looking at the legislation. It's very complicated, so I know the OAG is sorting through it. But it's a step in the right direction.
From a law enforcement perspective, you said you always look at these things through the eyes of a police officer. From that perspective, what tools that you do not have now that you would like to have that would be most helpful in curbing crime among young people and helping those young people?
Well, somehow, for me, 20 years doing this, for most police officers, we see a pattern evolving with young people as they progress from, different, I don't want to say, behavior. So that sends them down this path into crime and typically into violent crime and a lot of them that end up being victims of homicide. So things that we don't have access to is young people who tend to start off with problems very young, either neglect or abuse in their early life, and then starting to become chronically truant and as early as elementary, going into early middle school. So that this is the first start of that progression. These are all social service issues, not law enforcement issues, and we don't want to jump in and take law enforcement action. But we certainly think that there is a place that the government can intervene when you see this progression of young people who are becoming disaffected and they're becoming troubled. And so I just would like to see us have access to a little bit more of that information so we can help to intervene and identify children who need help before they end up in the justice system.
Under Councilmember Mendelson's proposal, after a juvenile is found involved in a second serious offense, that case and all the juveniles' previous arrests in the district would become public. The list of qualifying serious or dangerous offenses is long, too long for me to mention them all here, but they include assault, arson, robbery, sexual abuse, and murder. How does that help you?
That's really, I think that's really a measure more for what the public is asking for. The public wants to know. They want to, they want to know who violent offenders are, whether they're adults or juvenile, how to protect themselves, how to know who in their neighborhood or maybe coming into their neighborhood is dangerous.
Yeah, we had the head of DYRS on the other day, and we raised that issue with him because I remember, especially in Columbia Heights, there was a young person running around committing crimes, and there was a lot of upset on the part of people who live in that community about the fact that they were not allowed to have knowledge that this individual was even there, and I suspect that's what this proposal is in response to.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to remember is we're talking about here with public information, even if we limit it to violent offenders, the most egregious violent offenders. I think you have to start taking into consideration the impact that they can have on a community and people's lives, and that has to be a factor, whether they're adults or juveniles.